Tuesday night, I answered the call that tried to erase 10 years of my life. My mother told me I had to move out by the weekend because the house belonged to my sister now. She said it as casually as reading a trash pickup schedule. However, the deed had my name on it. Every receipt was in the box she thought I had discarded. I did not cry. I opened the box and started a legal war. My name is Eva Moore. I am 32 years old. And on the Tuesday night that ended my life as I knew it, I was just a woman trying to get her keys in the door. I lived in a box, a beige, cookie-cutter apartment in Portland with thin walls and a landlord who hated my ficus tree. It was my temporary place, the one I had been in for 18 months. Ever since my parents had decided my presence at the Maple Grove house was no longer required for manual labor, but not yet required for, well, whatever this was. That night, I was exhausted. I am a UX designer for a company called Northbridge UX Studio, and I had just survived 8 consecutive hours of virtual meetings, 8 hours of explaining to marketing executives why users would not, in fact, enjoy a pop-up ad that played music. My brain felt like static. My eyes burned from the blue light, and all I wanted was to kick off my shoes and water my long-suffering plant. I had just swiped my key fob to call the elevator when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with 2 words, Mom. A familiar dread, cold and heavy, settled in my stomach. It was the family chore feeling. A call from my mother, Margot, was never just a call. It was a summons. It was a task list. It was a problem. Inevitably, one my sister Tessa had created, that I was now expected to solve. I sighed, shifting the strap of my laptop bag on my shoulder, and pressed the green icon. Hi, Mom, I'm just getting home. Eva, her voice was flat, devoid of any warmth. Margot always sounded like she was reading from a script, one where she was the overworked CEO and everyone else was a failing intern. Tessa is moving back. I stepped into the elevator, my reflection staring back at me from the polished metal. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun. Oh, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. From Los Angeles? I thought her marketing job was going so well. She is engaged, Margot said, steamrolling over my question. She and Philip need to settle down, and they are moving back home. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft hiss. That is great, Mom. So, I guess they will be staying with you guys for a while? There was a beat of silence. It was the kind of silence that precedes an explosion. They will be staying at the Maple Grove house, Margot said. Her tone was the one she used for scheduling a dentist appointment or announcing we were out of milk. Completely matter of fact. The 4-bedroom house is hers now. Your father and I have decided. You need to be out by the weekend. The elevator stopped on my floor. I did not move. The words did not compute. They just hung in the air, metallic and sharp. What? My voice was barely a whisper. What did you say? Do not make this difficult. Eva, she snapped, her patience already gone. Tessa needs the space. Philip is moving in. They need the master bedroom. You need to clear your things out by Sunday. We told her she could move in on the 1st. Move out? I finally managed, stepping numbly into the hallway. My keys felt impossibly heavy in my hand. Mom, what are you talking about? Move out of where? The house, Eva, the house in Maple Grove. We are giving it to your sister. My apartment? I said, my voice rising. Mom, I live in the master bedroom. That is my office. My stuff is there. It is not your apartment, Eva. It is our house. And now it is Tessa's. She is getting married. She needs stability. I finally managed to jam the key into my apartment door, my hands shaking. And I do not? You are single, she said, as if that explained everything. You work from home. You can live anywhere. You can stay in that little apartment you have now. It is selfish to expect to keep a whole 4-bedroom house to yourself when your sister needs a home to start her family. Selfish. The word hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled into my dark apartment, the one I paid for on top of all the other expenses. I looked around at the beige walls, the temporary furniture, the unpacked boxes in the corner that had been there for a year and a half. This was not my home. My home was Maple Grove. My home was the house I had rebuilt from the studs out. 6 years ago, that house was not a prize. It was a rotting carcass. My parents had called me, weeping. Not Margot, of course, but my father, Daniel. He was the one who did the emotional work. They were drowning in debt. The property taxes had not been paid in 3 years. The bank was threatening foreclosure. The roof was leaking into the living room. A steady drip, drip, drip into a collection of buckets. The electrical system was a fire hazard. A tangle of knob and tube wiring from the 1950s. Just for a little while, Ava, my father had pleaded. Just until we get back on our feet. You are so good with money. You are so smart. So I moved in. I was 26 years old. I had a little bit of savings, a good job, and a plan to move to San Diego with my friends. I put that plan on hold. I sold my car to get a lump sum for the back taxes. I drained my savings account to put a down payment on the new roof. Just for 1 or 2 years, Mom had said, smiling brightly, all her problems solved. We will all be cozy together, and after this, the house will be for both of you girls, fair and square. 1 year turned into 6. 6 years. 6 years of my weekends spent tearing out drywall instead of going on dates. 6 years of learning how to sweat copper pipe from YouTube tutorials because we could not afford a plumber. 6 years of my salary going directly from my bank account to the home improvement store, to the electrician, to the roofing company. I paid for the new kitchen. I paid for the new bathrooms. I paid for the high-efficiency furnace and the new water heater. I paid to have the entire house rewired. A bill that cost more than $20,000. I paid for the paint, and I was the one who applied it, brushstroke by brushstroke, until my hands ached and my back screamed. I chose the muted gray for the living room, the warm white for the kitchen, the deep, calming blue for the master bedroom, my bedroom. I had poured over $120,000 of my own money into that house. Every cent I earned that did not go to food or my car payment went into that property, and I had the receipts to prove it. Well, I paid for the roof, I stammered, sinking onto the cheap sofa. I paid for the wiring. I just finished the patio. We know, dear, and we appreciate it, she said, her voice softening into that placating tone that meant she was about to deliver the final blow. Think of it as rent. You lived there for 6 years. After all, rent. The word was a slap. Now stop being difficult. Your sister needs this. I could hear my father in the background then. A faint, muffled sound. Is she all right? Margot? Let me talk to her. She is fine. Daniel, Margot said, her voice sharp and away from the phone. She is just being dramatic. He is fine, she said, coming back to me. Your father says hello. Now, we will expect your things to be gone by Sunday. Tessa is so excited. And the line went dead. I sat in the dark. The silence of my beige apartment was deafening. I sat there for 1 minute, 5 minutes, maybe 10. The static in my brain had been replaced by a roaring, rushing noise. I could not breathe. I could not think. I was not a person. I was a utility, a line item on their budget that had just been zeroed out. I was the fixer, the reliable one, the responsible daughter. And now that the house was fixed, I was no longer needed. The house was no longer Mom and Dad's house. It was Tessa's. My phone lit up again. I flinched, thinking it was my mother calling back to add another instruction. Maybe I was supposed to leave the sheets on the bed, too. But it was not Mom. It was Tessa. My finger hovered over the ignore button, but I knew that would only make it worse. She would just keep calling, or worse, start texting. I answered. Evie! Her voice was bright and bubbly, like a champagne flute full of pop rocks. Did Mom tell you the news? She told me. My voice was a dry croak. Is it not amazing? Philip and I are getting married, and we are getting a house. I am so excited. I cannot wait to get back to Maple Grove. Los Angeles is just so fake, you know? I knew nothing of the sort. I knew she had spent the last 6 years posting filtered photos from rooftop bars in Miami and New York, working for some vague marketing company that seemed to pay her mostly in free cocktails. While I was sanding drywall, she was getting bottle service. So, listen, she prattled on. I was hoping you could do me a huge favor. Since you are already there, could you make sure the master bedroom is all cleared out? I mean, like, all your stuff? Philip and I want to get the new furniture in right away, and I just hate clutter. Tessa. Oh, and that big flat-screen TV in the living room? The one you bought last year? Just leave it. Her voice was airy, as if she were asking to borrow a sweater. Philip loves it, and it just fits that wall so perfectly. It will save us the trouble of buying a new one. You do not mind, right? Thanks, sis. You are the best. Gotta run. Philip's here. See you soon. Click. She was gone. I dropped the phone onto the cushion beside me. The roaring in my ears was so loud I thought I might pass out. I had been kicked out. I had been erased. 6 years of my life, my sweat, my money, all dismissed in 2 phone calls, in less than 15 minutes. I was not just the caretaker, I was the fool. I stared at my hands. They were calloused, the knuckles dry. These were not the hands of a software designer. They were the hands of a general contractor, hands that had held a hammer, a drill, a paintbrush. My eyes drifted to a stack of mail on my coffee table. Bills, junk mail, and a single manila envelope. It was my bank statement. A statement I had been sending to the Maple Grove address for years, until I moved into this temporary box. And then, through the numbness, a single, sharp thought cut through the fog. Receipts. I had receipts, I had bank statements, I had contracts with the roofers, the electricians, all of it, all in my name, all paid from my account. My hand, moving on its own, picked up the phone. My fingers were not shaking anymore. I scrolled through my contacts, past Mom, past Tessa, past my father, until I found the name I was looking for. Naomi Price. My best friend from college, the woman who had listened to me cry over every single family drama for the last decade, the woman who was now one of the sharpest real estate and finance lawyers at Everline Legal Group. She picked up on the second ring. Eva, what is up? It is late. They are kicking me out, I said it out loud, and the words tasted like ash. Who? What? Your landlord? My family? My parents? They are giving the Maple Grove house to Tessa. They told me I have until Sunday to get my stuff. There was a dead silence on the other end. Naomi, who always had a sarcastic quip for everything, was silent. Naomi? When? She finally said, her voice no longer friendly and casual. It was cold. It was the voice that I had heard her use in a mock trial once. It was her lawyer voice. Tonight, just now, my mom called, and then Tessa. I told her everything. The 6 years, the money, the rent, the TV. When I finished, the silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. It felt like a spring coiling. Ava, Naomi said, her voice dangerously quiet. I want you to do me a favor. Stop crying, and stop feeling guilty. Stop feeling like you did something wrong. But, Naomi, it is their house. I do not believe this is just Tessa's house. She cut me off. Her words a precise echo of my own thoughts. Your parents are not financially smart enough to pull this off cleanly. You poured over $100,000 into that place. You have been paying the bills for 6 years. She took a deep breath. Go to your computer. Find every email. Go to your cloud storage. Find every bank statement, every scanned receipt, every contract with your name on it related to that house. Send it all to me, now. Naomi, what is the point? It is their house. They are just being awful. Maybe, or maybe they are not. Send me the paper. Eva, send me everything. I have a feeling your mother forgot what you do for a living. You organize complex systems. You find the flaws. So let's find the flaws. I stared at the black screen of my laptop. Eva, are you there? I am here, I said, my voice steadier. Good. Send me the files. And do not call them. Do not text them. Do not pack a single box. Do you understand me? Do not pack. Okay. We hung up. I sat there for another minute, the silence of the beige room pressing in on me. My mother thought I was selfish. My sister thought I was her storage unit. My father thought I was fine. But Naomi was right. I was a UX designer. I built systems. I followed the data. I looked for the paper trail. And for the first time all night, a new thought, a dangerous and unfamiliar idea, began to take root in the wreckage of my mind. They all called it Mom and Dad's house, but I was the one who paid the taxes. I was the one who signed the contracts. I was the one whose name was on the insurance, the utilities, My God. I scrambled for my bag, pulling out my laptop. What if the house was not their house at all? What if, after all these years, after all the receipts, what if it was mine? The beep of the file transferred to Naomi's secure server was the only sound in my apartment. It was 3 a.m. I had just sent her a decade of my life, digitized into folders, bank statements, scanned Home Depot receipts, contracts with my name, Eva Moore, on the signature line. As I watched the progress bar complete, the exhaustion I felt hours ago was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. My mind was scrolling backward, not just 6 years, but 10. I was 22 years old, standing in the same living room at Maple Grove that I would one day pay to rebuild. I was wearing a cap and gown, my honor cords thick and heavy. I had just graduated, summa cum laude, from the best design program in the state. I was vibrating with achievement, holding a piece of paper that said I was smart, I was capable, I was ready. My father, Daniel, gave me a quick, distracted hug. That is great. Honey, really great. He was already looking past me, toward the sports game on the television. My mother, Margot, did not look up from the mail she was sorting on the dining room table. Good, she said, tapping a stack of envelopes. Now you can get a real job and start paying some of these bills around here. There was no party, no celebratory dinner, no, we are so proud of you. My achievement was not a milestone. It was a starting pistol for my financial responsibility. 2 months later, my sister Tessa turned 18. To celebrate, she borrowed our father's sedan without asking, took it to a graduation party, and wrapped it around an oak tree. She walked away without a scratch, but the car was totaled. I braced for the explosion. I, who had once been grounded for a month for getting a B+ in calculus, knew what family justice looked like. But the explosion never came. Margot and Daniel sat Tessa at the kitchen table, the same table where I presented my bills. They held her hands while she wept about how scary it was. The next weekend, they did not ground her. They did not take away her phone. They took money from their already strained line of credit and bought her a brand new, safer SUV. She is just a baby, Margot told me, her voice fierce when I dared to question the logic. She was frightened. The last thing she needs is for us to make her feel worse. She is sensitive. Ava, you have to understand. She just feels things more deeply than you do. That was the moment the roles were officially carved in stone. Tessa was the crying child, the one who felt deeply and needed protection. I was the workhorse, the one who understood and could handle the burden. From that day on, I became the family's unpaid chief financial officer. It started small. Ava, you are so good with computers. Can you just look at this bill from the power company? It seems high. Soon. I was managing their entire financial lives. I sat on hold for hours with banks, negotiating lower interest rates on their credit cards. I created spreadsheets to track their spending, which they promptly ignored. I was the one who intercepted the letters with the red urgent stamps, the one who set up payment plans for overdue accounts. I was the designated worrier. Tessa, meanwhile, floated. She was the family's public relations manager. Her only job was to be charming, to post smiling photos, to be the fun one. While I was hunched over tax forms, she was at brunch. When I asked her, just once, if she could maybe take over the car insurance payments. She just laughed, a light, tinkling sound. "Oh, Evie, you know I do not get numbers," she said, tapping her perfectly manicured nails on her phone. "My brain just does not work that way. You are so good at all that boring stuff. You handle it, okay? It makes my head hurt." And I did. I handled it, because if I did not, the whole precarious house of cards would collapse. Then, 6 years ago, the call came. It was not a request. It was a detonation. The house of cards was collapsing anyway. I was in my own apartment then, a bright, airy studio I shared with 2 roommates in downtown Portland. I was saving money. I had that 5-year plan to move to San Diego. I was happy. My father called, and he was crying. Not a few quiet tears, but full-on, gasping sobs. "We are going to lose it, Ava. We are going to lose the house." Margot got on the line. Her voice was not flat and cold that day. It was raw with a panic I had never heard. The adjustable rate mortgage had adjusted. The property taxes were 3 years behind. The city was threatening a lien. And to top it all off, the roof had sprung a leak during a winter storm, and a section of the kitchen ceiling had collapsed. "The furnace is broken," Margot whispered, as if it were the final, shameful secret. "We have been using space heaters, but the electrical sockets are sparking. We are so scared." They did not have to ask. I knew why they were calling. "Please," Daniel begged, his voice cracking. "We just need some help to get things stable. If you could move home, just for a little while, just for a year, maybe 2. You are so good with these things." "We will all pitch in," Margot added, her voice suddenly bright with forced optimism. "It will be a family project, and once it is all fixed up, the house will be for both of you girls, fair and square. We promise." A year or 2, fair and square. I looked around my sunny apartment. I looked at the vision board on my wall, the one with pictures of surfboards and San Diego beaches. And then I said yes. I broke my lease. I sold half my furniture. I told my roommates I was leaving. I packed my life into cardboard boxes and drove them back to Maple Grove, back to the suburbs, back to the house that was already starting to smell like mold. It was not a family project, it was my project. My father, who had a bad back, would supervise from a kitchen chair while I tore out the water-damaged drywall. My mother, who could not stand the dust, would disappear for hours, going shopping for things we could not afford. The first 6 months were a blur of financial triage and manual labor. I took every freelance design gig I could find, working until 2 in the morning after my regular 9 to 5. Every single paycheck went into the house. The problems were not small. They were catastrophic. The leaky roof was a full replacement to the tune of $32,000. The sparking sockets meant the entire house needed to be rewired. $22,000. The broken furnace and the ancient, leaking water heater were another $15,000. The plumbing was crumbling. The kitchen was a disaster zone from the ceiling collapse. I was not helping. I was funding a full-scale renovation. I paid over $120,000. I paid for the new hardwood floors. I paid for the granite countertops that Margot suddenly could not live without. I paid for the new stainless steel appliances. I paid for the landscaper to fix the drainage problem that was flooding the basement. And every time, the contract was in my name. The checks came from my bank account, the receipts, which I dutifully scanned and saved. Because I am an organizer, that is what I do. All said. Billed to Eva Moore. And where was Tessa? Tessa was in Miami, posting selfies on a yacht. Tessa was in New York, at some exclusive marketing conference. She was living her best life, funded by a vague job in Los Angeles that seemed to pay her just enough to afford avocado toast and a new outfit every week. "You are so lucky you get to be there. Evie," she told me on a rare phone call. "I miss Mom and Dad so much. It must be so nice, all that family time." She never sent $1. I remember one night, about 3 years in, I was sitting at the new kitchen island I had paid for. staring at a bill from the plumber that was going to wipe out my entire month's salary. I was 30 years old, and my savings account had $213 in it. I was exhausted. When Margot came home, I finally cracked. "Mom, I cannot do this alone anymore. The patio is sinking, and it is going to cost at least $5,000 to fix. I asked Tessa if she could help. Just a little, even a few $100s. Margot's face, which had been smiling, turned to ice. "How could you?" she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "How could you put that on your sister? You know she cannot handle pressure. She is sensitive. She has anxiety. You, of all people, asking her for money. You are trying to hurt her. You are trying to make her feel guilty for being happy." "I am not trying to hurt her," I shouted, and the sound of my own raised voice shocked me. I am drowning, and you are all watching me." "Do not be dramatic, Ava," she snapped. "It is just money. We are a family. We take care of each other, and right now, your sister needs our support, not our bills." She walked away, and the conversation was over. I was, as always, selfish for asking, and dramatic for feeling. I paid for the patio, but there was one voice, a ghost in the back of my mind. My great-grandmother, Eleanor Moore. She had been the opposite of my mother, quiet, practical, and sharp as a tack. She did not trust Margot. She did not trust Daniel's weak will. She was the one who had bought the Maple Grove house originally, with her own money, back in the 70s. When I was little, before she passed away, she would let me sit in her study. It was the only room in the house Margot was not allowed to redecorate. It was dark wood, with a heavy desk and a small black fireproof safe in the corner. "Margot lives in the clouds," Eleanor would tell me, her voice papery as she guided my finger over a property tax bill. "You, Eva, you keep your feet on the ground. The ground is made of paper, remember that." She taught me how to read the fine print, how to look for interest rates, principal, and most importantly, the names on the ownership line. "Never let anyone treat you like a printing press, child," she whispered to me once, while Margot and a teenage Tessa screamed at each other in the next room over a boy. "You are a bank, and a bank must have collateral, and a bank must have a contract. Do not you ever forget it." I remember her small, neat hands, locking a set of papers in that safe. Margot had tried to get into it after the funeral, just to sort things, but the key was gone. Eleanor had made sure of that. I had not thought of Eleanor or her safe in years, not until tonight. I sat at my kitchen table 6 years ago, staring at that mountain of fresh bills for the house, the plumber, the electrician, the bank, my name. They were a burden. They were my sacrifice. They were the proof of my love, my duty, my stupidity. Now, at 3 a.m. in my beige, temporary box, I looked at the files I had just sent to Naomi. They were not a burden anymore. They were not a sacrifice. They were receipts. They were collateral. They were contracts. They were weapons. The printer in my home office had been humming steadily for 40 minutes. It was the only sound in the apartment, a rhythmic, mechanical churning that felt strangely grounding amidst the chaos in my head. The tray was already overflowing with warm paper. I was building a paper trail. Naomi had told me to find everything, and I took that instruction literally. I had downloaded every single PDF from my bank portal going back 6 years. I dug through old shoeboxes I had shoved into the back of my closet, unearthing crumpled invoices from the plumber who fixed the main line 3 years ago. I found the carbon copy of the contract with the roofing company, the ink fading but my signature still bold and clear on the bottom line. I found the property tax statements. I found the homeowner's insurance renewal forms. I found the utility bills. Every single one of them had been paid by me, but as I sorted them into piles on my living room floor, renovations, utilities, taxes, miscellaneous, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. On the invoices for the contractors, the roof, the floors, the electrical, the client name was always Eva Moore. I was the one who called them, met them, and paid them. But on the tax documents and the insurance papers, the ones that came from the city or the big institutions, my name was listed second, or sometimes not at all. It was always Daniel and Margot Moore. I took a photo of the spread and texted it to Naomi. Her reply came 3 minutes later. It was not a text, it was a voice note. Ava, this is a good start, but I need you to dig deeper. I need you to find anything you signed without reading. Think back. Did your dad ever hand you a stack of papers and say, just for the file, or just standard forms? Specifically, I am looking for anything related to a HELOC or a refinancing agreement, and I need the exact dates you moved in and out. I am heading to the Riverton County Clerk's office now to pull the actual deed and the history. Do not answer the phone if they call. I sat back on my heels, the smell of printer toner sharp in the air. Anything I signed without reading. There were dozens of those moments. My father, standing in the kitchen with a beer in one hand and a folder in the other, smiling that easy, relaxed smile. Just some compliance stuff for the city. Kiddo, since you are living here, they need to know you are an occupant for the census. Or, just updating the insurance policy. Sign here so you are covered if you trip on the stairs. I had signed. Of course I had signed. I trusted them. They were my parents. You do not lawyer up against the people who gave you life. Or at least, you are not supposed to. I spent the next 2 hours tearing my filing cabinet apart. I found a scanned copy of a document titled Modification of Security Instrument that I had vaguely remembered signing 4 years ago. I had thought it was about the alarm system. Reading it now, the legal jargon was dense, but the numbers were clear. It referenced a loan amount of $45,000. I felt a cold sweat prickle on the back of my neck. I sat on my beige sofa, the one that suddenly felt like a life raft in the middle of an ocean, and I waited. My mind drifted back to the only person in my family who had ever made me feel like I wasn't just a resource to be mined. Great-Grandma Eleanor. She had died when I was 22. Just a few months after I graduated. The last time I saw her, she was frail, her skin like parchment paper, sitting in her high-backed chair in the study at Maple Grove, the study that was now my father's man cave, filled with his golf trophies and a mini fridge. But back then, it smelled of old books and peppermint. Eleanor had grabbed my wrist with a grip that was surprisingly strong. Ava, she had wheezed, her eyes cloudy but intense. Listen to me. People will try to take what is yours, even the people you love, especially the people you love, because they think love means sharing everything, even the things they did not earn. She had pulled me closer. When you turn 30, you look at the papers. Do you hear me? You look at the papers. You make your own home. Do not let anyone choose your roof for you after you turn 30. I had nodded, thinking she was just rambling, her mind wandering in her final days. I thought she meant I should buy a house by the time I was 30. I thought it was just general life advice. I looked at the calendar on my wall. I was 32. My phone rang. It was Naomi. I picked up immediately. I found something about a security instrument, I said, the words rushing out. And a loan for $45,000. Stop, Naomi said. Her voice was different. It wasn't the voice of my friend, and it wasn't the calm, professional voice of a lawyer. It was the voice of someone who had just witnessed a crime scene. It was shaking with a suppressed, cold rage. Eva, are you sitting down? Yes, I am on the couch. Okay. I am at the Riverton County Recorder of Deeds. I have the physical files in front of me, not the digital summaries, the actual wet ink archives. I heard the rustle of paper on the other end of the line. Your great-grandmother, Eleanor Moore, did not leave the house to your parents. The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. What? She left the house in a living trust, Naomi said, her diction precise and sharp. The Eleanor Moore Revocable Living Trust, dated 12 years ago. The terms are explicit. Your parents, Daniel and Margot, were granted a life estate contingent on maintenance of the property. That means they were allowed to live there. Just live there. I do not understand, I whispered. If they just live there, who owns it? You do, Naomi said. The air left my lungs. The trust stipulates that the title to the property transfers fully and irrevocably to the beneficiary, Eva Marie Moore, upon her 30th birthday. That was 2 years ago. Eva, 2 years ago. I stared at the wall. I own the house? You have owned the house for 24 months. It is your asset. It is your property. Your parents are, legally speaking, your tenants. Tenants who have zero right to transfer the property, sell it, or give it to your sister. But my brain was scrambling to catch up. But they told me. They said it was their house. They said they were leaving it to Tessa. Why didn't I know? Here is the part that is going to make you want to scream, Naomi said, the rustling of papers getting louder. Right after Eleanor's funeral, your parents filed a motion to seal the schedule of assets in the trust, citing family privacy concerns. It is a rare move. But they got a sympathetic judge. They effectively hid the trigger clause about your 30th birthday from public record, unless someone came here and physically pulled the unredacted will from the vault, which I just did. My parents had hidden the will. They had hidden my inheritance. But Naomi, I said, my voice trembling, if I own the house, what about that loan? The $45,000? And the HELOC? How could they get a home equity line of credit if they do not own the home? That, Naomi said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper, is where this stops being a family dispute and starts being a felony. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I am looking at the HELOC application right now, Naomi continued. It is dated 18 months ago, 6 months after the title transferred to you, on the application, where it asks for owner of record, your father checked self, and where it asks for title holder, he forged a quitclaim deed affirmation. They used your house, your property, as collateral to take out a loan for $45,000, a loan that, based on the transaction history I'm seeing, went directly into paying off credit card debt and buying a car. Tessa's car, I whispered. The SUV. She got a new car last year. Probably, Naomi said. Eva, listen to me very carefully. This is bank fraud. This is title fraud. This is a federal crime. They borrowed money against an asset they did not own, and they let you, the actual owner, pay for the repairs to increase the value of the asset they were stealing from. I felt a wave of nausea, but it was followed immediately by a strange, light sensation. For 10 years, I had carried a boulder on my back labeled selfish. I had believed I was the bad daughter, the cold one, the one who cared too much about money, the one who wasn't generous enough. When I asked Tessa to chip in for the patio, I had hated myself for days. When I moved out to this apartment because I couldn't stand the noise anymore, I felt like I was abandoning them. But I wasn't selfish. I was the owner. I wasn't the bad daughter. I was the landlord. And they weren't struggling parents trying to keep the family afloat. They were con artists. Ava? Naomi's voice cut through the fog. I am here, I said. My voice sounded different to my own ears, stronger. So, the house is mine, legally, totally. 100%, Naomi confirmed. And because they opened that HELOC fraudulently, if the bank finds out, the loan can be called in immediately. But we are going to use that. We are going to use all of it. What do? I asked. Do I go there? Do I tell them? No, Naomi commanded. Absolutely not. You do not say a word. You do not call your mother. You do not text Tessa back. If they call you, you let it go to voicemail. If they show up at your apartment, you do not open the door. But the weekend, I said. They told me I have to move my stuff out by the weekend. Let them think that, Naomi said. Let them think you are scared and scrambling. It gives us time to draft the paperwork. I am going to prepare a notice to quit. That is an eviction notice, Eva, and a cease and desist regarding the financial assets. And I'm going to file an emergency injunction to freeze that HELOC so they cannot drain any more equity out of your house. My house, I repeated. The words tasted sweet. Your house, Naomi said firmly. From this moment on, you are not their daughter. You are the plaintiff. And they are the defendants. Do not give them an inch. Do not let them guilt trip you. You have the receipts. And now, you have the deed. Okay, I said. Okay, Naomi, I trust you. I will come over tonight with the papers for you to sign, she said. Get some rest. Ava, you are going to need your energy. The war starts tomorrow. She hung up. I lowered the phone and looked at the pile of papers on my floor. The invoices, the receipts, the proof of every dollar I had sacrificed. I picked up the invoice for the roof replacement. $32,000. I remembered the day I paid it. I had cried in my car afterwards because it wiped out my savings for a wedding I hoped to have one day. My mother had told me I was being materialistic for crying over money. I looked at the invoice again. It wasn't a loss. It was an investment. I walked over to the window and looked out at the gray Portland sky. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a text from Tessa. Hey, sis. Just checking you are still good to clear out the master by Saturday. Philip wants to measure for curtains. Love you. I looked at the screen. I didn't feel the familiar pang of annoyance or the urge to apologize. I didn't feel anything but a cold, steely resolve. I deleted the thread. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it Evidence. My grandmother was right. She had tried to warn me. She knew exactly who her granddaughter was, and she knew exactly who her daughter was. She had given me the ultimate shield, and I had just been too blind to see it. But I could see it now. I wasn't moving out. I was moving in, and I wasn't bringing cardboard boxes. I was bringing the law. The next 48 hours were a blur of cold, precise strategy. My beige apartment, once a symbol of my temporary, beige life, transformed into a war room. Naomi arrived the next morning, not with a comforting hug, but with a leather briefcase and a look of grim determination. She spread her files out on my small dining table, and it was beautiful. In my world of user experience design, we use flowcharts to map a user's journey, anticipating every click, every pain point, every decision. Naomi, it turned out, did the same thing, but for legal warfare. Okay, she said, pulling out a legal pad and drawing a box at the top. Phase 1. Asset securitization. This is where we stop the bleeding and reclaim the physical property. She drew a line to another box. Phase 2. Formal notification. This is the confrontation. We serve them. We inform them of their legal standing, and we present our non-negotiable terms. Another line. Phase 3. Leverage and containment. This is the what-if box. What if they refuse? What if they call the media? What if they try to get back in? It was the most logical, comforting thing I had ever seen. She was speaking my language. I have already done 2 things, she said, tapping her pen. First, I filed an emergency injunction against the HELOC. As of 9:05 this morning, that line of credit is frozen. Your parents cannot pull 1 more cent of equity out of your house. I breathed out a breath I did not know I was holding. My house? Say it until you believe it, she said, not looking up. Second, I ran a background check and a credit history. They have a regular schedule. Your mother goes to a standing hair appointment every Thursday at 10 a.m., and your father plays golf with his Tuesday-Thursday league. They are always out of the house between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Thursdays. That is our window. A window for what? For this. She slid a business card across the table. Secure Lock Services. I have an appointment for their top locksmith to meet us at the property tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. We are changing every lock on the property, the front door, the back door, the garage, the side gate. We can just do that? It is your house, Ava, she said, her patience unwavering. You can do anything you want. You are not breaking in. You are accessing your own property and securing it against unauthorized tenants. While I processed the beautiful, terrifying legality of that, she pulled a thick, bound document from her briefcase. It was spiral-bound, like a presentation. This, she said, is the notification packet. This is what we will give them. This is what the police will see. The cover page was simple. notice of legal ownership and demand to vacate. Inside, she had tabbed every section. Tab A, a certified copy of the living trust, with the clause about my 30th birthday highlighted in fluorescent yellow. Tab B, a certified copy of the new deed, filed 2 years ago, naming me as the sole owner. Tab C, the bank fraud evidence, a copy of the fraudulent HELOC application, their forged signatures clear as day. Tab D, the receipts, a 12-page addendum summarizing the over $120,000 of my money, cross-referenced with my bank statements, that I had poured into the property. While I was at the office, I also drafted this, she said, pulling out a separate, even scarier-looking document. This is a formal complaint of bank fraud and elder financial manipulation, the elder being Eleanor, that I am prepared to file with the State Attorney General and the Federal Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We will not file it yet. This is our leverage. This is what we show them when they try to argue.
My God, Naomi.
This is not a family squabble. Eva, this is a crime. We are treating it as such. The next day, Thursday, was the strangest day of my life. I drove to Maple Grove. My hands were shaking so hard on the steering wheel that I had to grip it at 10 and 2, like I was a teenager learning to drive. Naomi rode shotgun, her briefcase on her lap. We did not talk. We pulled up at 10:05 a.m. The driveway was empty, just as she had predicted. The house looked exactly the same. The hydrangeas I had planted by the porch were in full bloom. The new roof, the one that cost me my San Diego fund, looked solid and expensive. I used to look at it with a mix of pride and resentment. Today, I just looked at it with a cold sense of ownership. "This is my house," I said, my voice quiet. "Yes, it is," Naomi said. A white van from Secure Lock Services pulled up a minute later. A man in a blue uniform got out, holding a clipboard and a heavy-duty tool bag. "Ms. Moore? Ms. Price?" he asked. "That is us," Naomi said, handling him a copy of the deed and my driver's license. "We are the owners. We need a full rekey of all access points." He nodded, checked the documents against my ID, and got to work. Naomi and I walked to the front door. The door I had painted a bright, welcoming red 2 summers ago. I put my old key in the lock. It felt wrong. I turned it and pushed the door open. The house was quiet. It smelled like stale coffee and my father's cologne. The locksmith started on the garage. The sound of his electric drill was a sharp, buzzing noise that cut through the silence. I walked into the living room. There was my 80-inch flat-screen TV, the one Tessa had claimed. There was the sofa I had bought. In the kitchen, the granite countertops I had haggled over were glinting in the morning light. "It is all mine," I whispered. I felt a surge of elation, immediately followed by a wave of crushing guilt. This was the house I grew up in. This was my parents' home. "No," Naomi said, as if she could read my mind. "This was your great-grandmother's home. Then it was your home. They were just guests. Guests who overstayed their welcome and stole from the host." I walked through the rooms. My old bedroom, now their master, was a mess. Margot's clothes were piled on a chair. Daniel's golf magazines were stacked by the bed. The other rooms were untouched. My childhood bedroom, Tessa's, still painted a nauseating shade of lavender from when she was 15, and the 4th bedroom, the one I had used as my office and guest room when I lived here. My furniture was still in it, covered in dust. The drill was at the front door now, a loud, whining zzzzt. There was a thunk as the old deadbolt mechanism was removed, a clink as it hit the locksmith's metal tray. It sounded like a ceremony, the severing of a chain. I looked at my parents' things. Should I start packing their clothes? "Absolutely not," Naomi said, her voice sharp. "You will not touch one thing that belongs to them. You are the owner, not the moving company. Touching their possessions complicates things. It gives them a claim." She threw my priceless heirlooms in a box. "No, we stay on the high ground. The only things you are authorized to move are your own." "My office furniture?" "That is yours. We can get it later. Right now. Our only mission is securing the asset. The locksmith finished the front door. He walked over and handed me a small, sealed plastic bag. Inside were 2 new keys, shining and sharp-toothed. "All new tumblers, ma'am," he said. "The old keys are useless. The garage door opener codes have been wiped and reset. This is the only one that works." He handed me a new remote. I took the keys. They were cold and solid. I slid one into the new lock. It turned smoothly, with a satisfying, expensive snick. "Good," Naomi said. "Now for the last piece." She went out to her car and came back with a box. Inside was a smart video doorbell and 2 small wireless security cameras. "One for the front, one for the back patio," she said. "I am setting them up on my phone for now. We will transfer them to yours. They are motion-activated and record audio. When your mother shows up and starts the 'My daughter locked me out in the cold' performance, we will have a high-definition, cloud-saved recording of the truth." She got to work installing the doorbell. I stood on the porch, my porch, and looked out at the quiet suburban street. That night, I was back in my beige apartment. It no longer felt like a box. It felt like a bunker. Naomi had given me homework. "Your family's weapon is guilt," she had said, packing up her briefcase. "It is the only weapon they have left, and you have been trained your whole life to be vulnerable to it. Your final task is to build your armor." So I did. I pulled out my old journals. I scrolled back years on my phone, through thousands of text messages. I was building my emotional file. I found the text from my mother. After I sent her the link to my first big professional design project. "That is nice, dear. Did you remember to call the plumber?" I found the birthday card from my father, from when I turned 30. "Happy birthday. Evie. We are so proud of the responsible adult you have become. Love, Mom and Dad." The card had a $20 bill in it. It was the same day the $32,000 roofing payment had cleared my account. I found the long, weeping text from Tessa. "I just feel so lost. Evie, I think I need to go to that yoga retreat in Bali to find myself. You are so lucky you have your life all figured out." It was dated the week after I had been forced to cancel my own vacation to pay for the new water heater. I read every message. I looked at every journal entry. I cataloged every instance of gaslighting, guilt-tripping, and emotional blackmail. I was, as a UX designer, identifying the user's pain points, and the user was me. I did not stop until the resentment was stronger than the guilt. When I was done, the sun was coming up. It was Friday, the day Tessa was scheduled to fly in and measure for curtains. Naomi texted me at 8 a.m. "It is done. I have spoken with the local police precinct. I filed a request for a civil standby for 2 p.m. today. I explained the situation, disputed ownership, volatile tenants, and a pre-existing court document. They are sending 2 officers to keep the peace while we serve the papers. They will meet us there." I stared at the text. Police, officers. It was real. I thought I would be terrified. I thought I would be sick. I showered, got dressed in my most professional, non-nonsense black blazer. I made coffee. My hands were perfectly steady. I sat on my sofa, my phone on the table. The smart camera feed was open on my laptop. I could see my own front porch, quiet in the morning light. I was not sleeping. I was not afraid of being kicked out. I was waiting. It was the calmest I had felt in 10 years. The counterattack was planned. The pieces were in place. All I had to do was wait for the show to begin. Friday morning started with a ping. I did not even have to unlock my phone. The notification banner lit up the screen. It was an Instagram story update from Tessa. I tapped it. My sister's face, airbrushed and beaming, filled the screen from an airport terminal. She was holding up a venti-sized coffee cup like a trophy. The text overlay, written in a bubbly pink script, read, "LAX to PDX, coming home to get the keys and start my new life. So excited." I held the power button and the volume down key. The click of the screenshot was sharp and satisfying. I immediately forwarded it to Naomi. Her reply was instant. "Got it. Evidence of intent. See you at 1:45 p.m. at the Starbucks down the street from the house. Stay off your phone. The next few hours were the longest of my life. I paced my apartment. I drank water. I did not eat. I just watched the clock. At 1:30 p.m., I left my apartment, got in my car, and drove to the rendezvous point. I was sipping a lukewarm coffee I did not want when my phone, which I had placed on the passenger seat, began to vibrate. It did not stop. It buzzed once, twice, 3 times, then it lit up with a voicemail notification, then another, and another. I looked at the screen. Missed call. Tessa. Missed call. Tessa. New voicemail. Missed call. Tessa. It was 1:55 p.m. She was early. I did not listen to the voicemails. I did not have to. I just watched my laptop, which was open on the passenger seat, connected to my phone's hotspot. The feed from the new video doorbell was live. Tessa was on my front porch. My front porch. She was dressed in white jeans and a pink sweater. Her luggage pilled around her feet. She was jamming her old key into the new lock. It would not go in. She tried the old garage code. The keypad flashed red. She looked confused, then annoyed. She pulled out her phone. "Ava, pick up the phone!" she screamed at her voicemail. "What the hell is going on? The key is not working. I am standing out here with all my stuff. Did you change the lock? Are you insane?" She pounded on the door. "Ava, open the door. This is not funny." Another voicemail. "I cannot believe you are doing this. You are betraying this family. Mom and Dad are giving me this house. You have to let me in. You are crazy." Right on schedule. A familiar black SUV pulled up to the curb, braking too hard. Margot and Daniel. My mother was out of the car before it was even in park. She marched up the walkway, her face a mask of thunder. Daniel trailed behind, his hands shoved in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. "What is going on?" Margot snapped at Tessa. "She changed the locks!" Tessa shrieked, tears of frustration now streaming down her face. "Ava changed the locks. She is not answering." "What?" Margot turned to the door as if it had personally insulted her. She began to bang on it with the flat of her hand. "Ava! Ava Moore! You open this door right now. This is your father and mother. You open this door." A curtain twitched in the house across the street. Mrs. Klein, the new neighbor. She had only moved in about 6 months ago. She stepped out onto her own porch, pretending to check her mail. Her phone was in her hand, held sideways, discreetly. She was filming. The thought of it made me smile. My father, in a rare show of initiative, joined in, rattling the doorknob. "Ava, honey, what is all this? There must be a misunderstanding. Open the door, and we can talk about it." "She is not in there," Tessa sobbed. "Her car is not here. She locked us out of our own house." "Our own house," that was the line. "That is our cue," Naomi said from the driver's seat of her car. She had pulled in next to me 3 minutes ago. "Are you ready?" "I am ready," I said. A police cruiser, slow and official, turned the corner and parked directly in front of the house. 2 officers got out. They looked calm, professional, and entirely unimpressed. Naomi and I got out of her car and walked across the street. The 4 of us, me, Naomi, and the 2 officers, converged on the walkway at the same time. It was a slow, deliberate procession, a legal team arriving for a deposition. My family, who had been clustered around the front door like a pack of angry wolves, turned. The looks on their faces were a study in shock. Tessa's jaw dropped. Daniel took a step back, his face pale. Margot's eyes narrowed, going from me to Naomi to the police officers and back again. "What is this?" Margot demanded, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "Ava, what have you done? You called the police? On your own family?" "She is crazy," Tessa cried, pointing at me. "She is insane. She is stealing my house." "Ma'am, we are here to keep the peace," the taller of the 2 officers said, his voice a calm, deep monotone. His hand was resting near his belt. "We have a request for a civil standby." Civil standby, Margot shrieked. We are her parents. This is our house. She has locked us out. She is the one trespassing. She pointed a long, shaking finger at Naomi. And you did this. You are her friend. Are you not? You put these crazy ideas in her head. You brainwashed her. My client is here to take possession of her legal property, Margot, Naomi said. Her voice was as cold and flat as a steel plate. She was holding the bound document packet. She turned to the officers and handed them a copy. Officers, my name is Naomi Price. I am counsel for Ms. Eva Moore. This packet contains a certified copy of the living trust, the current deed of ownership for this property, and evidence of felony bank fraud perpetrated by Mr. and Mrs. Moore. My client, Eva Moore, is the sole legal owner. The officer took the packet and began to read the cover page. Margot just laughed, a harsh barking sound. Owner? What are you talking about? We own this house. Daniel, tell them. My father, Daniel, finally spoke. He tried that easy. Aw-shucks smile that had worked on me for 30 years. Officers, there is a big misunderstanding here. This is a family matter. My wife and I, we do not understand all that fancy legal paperwork. We just live here. This is our daughter. This is a family home. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Eva, honey, what is this? This is just a loan we took out, a temporary thing. We were going to pay it back. It is all just family money. The taller officer looked up from the first page of the document. He did not look at my father. He looked at me. Then he looked at Margot. Sir, according to this deed, he said, tapping the paper, the sole owner of this property is Ms. Eva Moore. Legally, it belongs to her. The world went silent. Mrs. Klein, across the street, was now openly filming. Her phone held high. Tessa was the first to break. What? Her voice was a small, confused squeak. What did he say? A deed? What about us, Mom? She turned to my mother. You said the house was mine. You said it. Margie Fellett was staring at Naomi, her face white. You cannot prove anything. That is a lie. Is it? Naomi said, opening her own copy of the packet. She held it up. This is a copy of the HELOC application you and Daniel signed 18 months ago, 6 months after the title legally transferred to Eva. And this, she flipped the page, is the copy of the forged title affirmation. And this, she flipped again, is the summary of the $120,000 my client paid for renovations while you were borrowing against her asset. Tessa's face was crumpling. A trust? She whispered, looking at Margot. What is she talking about? What trust? Why did no one tell me about a trust? Margot ignored her. She was staring at me. You did this, she seethed. After everything we have done for you, you ungrateful, selfish girl, we gave you a roof over your head. You gave me a roof I paid for, I said. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was steady. It did not even tremble. And for the benefit of the officers and the neighbors, Naomi said, her voice projecting clearly across the lawn, I will read the most relevant line from the Eleanor Moore Living Trust, which is legally binding. She read from the page, her voice sharp and clear. Margot and Daniel Moore are granted a life estate only, allowing them to reside in the property. They shall have no power to encumber, mortgage, or transfer the property in any way. She lowered the paper. Opening a $45,000 line of credit against it is encumbering it. Margot, and giving it to Tessa is transferring it. Both are in direct violation of the trust, and the HELOC is just plain old bank fraud. My father looked like he was going to be sick. The taller officer stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Moore, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. This is a civil matter, but based on the documents presented, you are not the owners. Ms. Eva Moore is. She has the right to change the locks. From this point forward, if you attempt to enter this property without her express permission, she has the right to have you removed for trespassing. You cannot be serious, Margot shrieked. "This is our—" "You need to leave the premises," the officer said. "Now." Daniel grabbed Margot's arm. "Margot, let's go. Just, let's go. We will sort this out later." "Sort this out? Sort this out?" Tessa was looking at them, her face a mask of disbelief. "You told me it was my house. You told me. You lied to me." "Get in the car, Tessa," Margot snapped, her mask of the victim shattering, revealing the cold fury beneath. Tessa just stood there, amidst her luggage, as her world, the one that had been handed to her on a silver platter, dissolved. My father gently but firmly guided Margot back to the SUV. He came back and started grabbing Tessa's suitcases, throwing them in the trunk. Margot rolled down the window. She did not look at the police. She looked at me. Her eyes were black with a hatred so pure it was almost stunning. "You will regret this," she whispered. "You have destroyed this family. You will die alone." The car sped off. Tessa was still standing on the sidewalk, crying. She looked at me, her face red and puffy. "How could you, Eva? How could you do this to me?" "They did this to you, Tessa," I said. "They lied to you. They lied to both of us." She just shook her head, sobbing, and pulled out her phone, probably to call for an Uber. Naomi and I stood with the police officers until my family was gone. I signed a paper for the civil standby. The officer handed me back the document packet. "Good luck, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "Looks like you have got everything in order." They got in their cruiser and drove away. The street was silent, except for Tessa's muffled sobs from the curb. Mrs. Klein had, at some point, gone back inside. Naomi and I just stood there, on the walkway. "Well," Naomi said, "that was phase 2. I looked at her. I looked at the red front door. I looked at the house. My house. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the new set of keys. They felt solid in my hand. I walked up the steps, past the porch swing I had installed, and stood on the mat. The door was behind me, solid and locked, my property. My family was in front of me, a shattered wreck on the sidewalk. I stood on the porch. I put the keys in my pocket. And I did not move. The fireworks started the next morning, exactly as Naomi had predicted. I was in my own apartment, drinking coffee and watching the local news, when my phone, which I had placed on Do Not Disturb, began to light up. It was not a text or a call I recognized. It was a number I had not seen in years. My Aunt Clara, my mother's sister. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. "Eva, this is your aunt. Call me immediately. I have heard the most horrific story." And so it began. The flying monkey phase, as Naomi had called it. For the next 24 hours, my phone was a non-stop barrage of guilt and indignation from the extended Moore and Margot family network. My Uncle David, my cousin Mark, my mother's second cousin from Ohio. It turned out my mother had been very, very busy on the phone. The script was always the same. I had kicked my parents out. I had stolen their house. I was ungrateful and cold, and what kind of monster does this to the people who raised them? At first, I ignored them, but Naomi had given me a different set of instructions. "Do not ignore them," she had said during our strategy session. "Pick up, be calm, be the reasonable one, but be a broken record. Stick to the facts, and document every single call." So, when my Uncle David called for the second time, his voice already booming with self-righteous anger, I answered, "Ava, what in God's name is this I am hearing? Your mother is hysterical. She says you have thrown them out on the street." "Hello, Uncle David," I said, my voice calm. I had a legal pad and pen in front of me. I wrote down the time. Saturday, 11:03 a.m. "Do not hello Uncle David me," he shouted. "You stole your parents' house." "That is actually not true," I said, as if I were correcting a minor error in a design spec. "The house was never theirs to give. It was left to me in a trust by great-grandma Eleanor. I have been the sole legal owner for 2 years. There was a sputtering sound on the other end. What?" Your mother said. I know what she said, I continued, my voice level. She and my father also committed bank fraud by taking out a $45,000 loan against my house, without my knowledge. After the title had already transferred to me, they did this to buy Tessa a new car. I also have the receipts for over $120,000 in renovations and taxes that I paid out of my own pocket for the last 6 years, while they were living there as my tenants. Dead silence. The booming, self-righteous anger was gone, replaced by a vacuum. A trust? He finally stammered. A legally binding trust, I said. Naomi, my lawyer, has all the certified paperwork. I would be happy to have her send you a copy of the deed, if you are interested. Oh, he said. The word was small. Well, I did not know. I know you did not. My mother has been very careful about what she shares. She preferred the story where I was the villain, but the facts are the facts. I have to go now. Uncle David, thank you for calling. I hung up. It was like a magic trick. The call pattern was identical, every single time. Phase 1, righteous fury on my parents' behalf. Phase 2, me calmly, unemotionally reciting the holy trinity of trust, bank fraud, and $120,000. Phase 3, a long, stunned silence. Phase 4, a hasty retreat, often with a mumbled, I am sorry, Eva, I had no idea. I logged every call. Aunt Clara, 11:20 a.m., quoted Margot as saying, I used some legal trick to steal the family legacy, recited facts, ended call with apology. Cousin Mark, 1:15 p.m., quoted Tessa as saying, I went crazy and brought cops to attack them. Recited facts about civil standby and ownership, ended call by saying, wow, that is a lot. By Sunday evening, the calls had stopped. The truth, it turned out, was a very effective fire extinguisher. Naomi was delighted. This is perfect, she said when I emailed her my log. This is now a documented pattern of harassment and slander. Every time they tell that lie to someone and that person calls you, they are strengthening our legal case for damages. Keep it up. My mother, realizing her phone tree of shame had failed, moved on to her next favorite tactic, public martyrdom. She took to social media. She did not name me. Of course, she was too clever for that. Instead, she posted vague, weepy statuses on her Facebook page, the one I was still technically friends with. It is a sad, sad world when children forget the meaning of family. The greatest pain a mother can know is to be turned away by her own flesh and blood, praying for peace and understanding. And my personal favorite, we are living in a terrible time, when people think it is okay to sue their own parents, who gave them everything. My heart is broken. It was a brilliant performance. It was designed to paint her as the soft, wounded victim, and me as the cold, litigious monster. A few of her friends, the ones who did not know the real story, left comments like, sending hugs, Margot, and the world is so cold. But Margot had made a critical miscalculation. She lived in her own curated bubble, but she had forgotten about one thing, Mrs. Klein. The video showed up on Monday in the Maple Grove Neighborhood Association private Facebook group, a group I was still a member of from my time as the responsible resident. Mrs. Klein had posted it. Her caption was simple. Lots of drama on our street Friday. A family dispute over a house. Does anyone know what is going on? The video was 37 seconds long. It was not the whole confrontation, but it was the most important part. It was not shaky. Mrs. Klein had a steady hand. It showed Tessa, standing on the sidewalk, shrieking, You are stealing my house! My house! It showed Margot, her face contorted, banging on the door and screaming for Ava to let her in. It showed Naomi, calm and professional, handing a document to the police officer. And then it captured the audio of the officer, clear as a bell, saying, Sir, according to this deed, the sole owner of this property is Ms. Eva Moore. The comment thread was explosive. Wait, that is Margot Moore. She told me her daughter locked her out. Did he say the daughter is the owner? I was there. I saw the whole thing. The daughter, Eva, had all the paperwork. The parents had nothing. They did not even look surprised. Just angry they got caught. This sounds like a case of financial abuse. My brother did this to my mom. It is awful. I am a paralegal. If the cops looked at a deed and sided with the daughter, that means the daughter's claim is 100%. You cannot argue with a deed at the scene. Within an hour, a dozen other stories had popped up from other neighbors, people who had seen me, over the years, doing the yard work, painting the house, meeting the contractors. That girl Eva was always the one working on that house. I never saw the parents lift a finger. Wait, is this the sister who is always on vacation, while the other one was paying for a new roof? Margot's carefully crafted narrative of the wounded victim was publicly, digitally, and spectacularly shredded. By 3 p.m., the post had been quietly deleted by the group admin, but the damage was done. The truth was out. That night, my father called. I had blocked Margot. I had blocked Tessa. I had left my father, Daniel, unblocked. A small, stupid part of me had been waiting for him to call and apologize, to say he had been wrong, that he had been railroaded by Margot. The call was not an apology. It was phase 2 of the guilt campaign. Eva? His voice was low and heavy, full of that manufactured, long-suffering sadness I knew so well. Hi, Dad. Your mother. She is not doing well. Eva, she is not well at all. Her blood pressure is through the roof. The doctor said she is under extreme stress. She cannot stop crying. She has not eaten in 2 days. I waited. I did not say, I'm sorry. I did not say, oh no. I just waited. We are staying at a motel. Eva, a motel. Your mother, at her age, in a cheap motel. That sounds difficult, I said. My voice was flat. He took a breath. Honey, I know you are upset. I know we made some mistakes. We did not understand those papers. You know your mother and I, we are not good with details. You were good enough with details to file a forged loan application, I said. He flinched. I could hear it. That was just a loan. Eva, we were going to pay it back. It was just to help Tessa. She was in a real bind. You used my house as an ATM, Dad, and you lied to me about it for 18 months. And then you tried to kick me out and give my house to the person you bought a car for with my money. Please, honey, he said, his voice cracking. The tears were coming. They were always the final weapon. Do not talk about it like that. It is just a house. It is just walls and wood. We are your family. Is this worth it? Tearing your family apart over a house? Your mother is sick. Just let us come home. We can talk about it. We can work it out. Just let us come home. I closed my eyes. I pictured him in that motel room, pacing the cheap carpet, using the last weapon in his arsenal. My love for him, my duty, my guilt. I thought about the journal entries I had read. I thought about the bank statements. I thought about the $32,000 roof. No, I said. There was a sharp intake of breath. What? No. You cannot come home. It is not your home. It is my home. And I am not having this conversation with you. If you or Mom want to discuss the terms of retrieving your personal belongings, you can have your lawyer contact my lawyer. Lawyer? He whispered, as if the word was poison. Eva, You are my parents. I cut him off. And you raised me to be responsible. So I am being responsible. I am protecting my assets from the people who are trying to steal them. The stress your mother is feeling is the direct consequence of her own actions. The stress you are feeling is the consequence of your choices. It is not my fault. It is not my responsibility to fix. I had never, ever said anything like that to him in my entire life. He was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was not sad. It was cold, just like Margot's. You are not the daughter I raised, he said. You are right, I said. I am not. The daughter you raised would have given you the keys. This is someone new. I hung up the phone, and then, and only then, did I start to shake. I did not cry, but I shook. I shook for 10 solid minutes. The adrenaline and the grief and the rage all coming to a head. A chemical storm inside me. I had done it. I had held the line. And it was the hardest, most painful thing I had ever done. The next day, I called Naomi. "I need help," I said. "Not legal help. I think I need to talk to someone. I almost caved. He almost got me." "I have a name for you," she said, without missing a beat. "Dr. Alani. She specializes in this: financial abuse, family trauma, high-control relationships. I will send you her number. She is the best. She will help you build a new firewall." A week later, I was sitting in a quiet, beautiful office with large plants and a comfortable sofa. Dr. Alani was a warm, intelligent woman in her 50s. I told her everything. I told her about Tessa and the car. I told her about the B+ in calculus. I told her about the roofing bill and my father's tears. I told her about the motel and the "I am not the daughter you raised" comment. I talked for an hour. When I was finished, I felt raw and empty. I waited for her to tell me how I could fix it, how I could make peace, how I could still have a family. She just leaned forward, her eyes kind but unyielding. "Eva," she said, her voice gentle, "from everything you have told me, you are not the one who betrayed this family." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You are the only one in it who understands what a boundary is. The tragedy is that you are the only one who was ever forced to build them." The letter from Gregory Shaw arrived on a Tuesday morning via courier. It was thick, heavy, and printed on bond paper so expensive it practically snapped when you turned a page. Shaw was a known entity in the city, the kind of lawyer who billed by the quarter hour and specialized in making uncomfortable problems disappear for wealthy families. My parents could not afford him, which meant they had likely maxed out yet another credit card or dipped into a retirement fund they did not have to hire him. I sat in Naomi's conference room, the glass walls overlooking the Portland skyline, and read the opening paragraph. It was a masterpiece of legal fiction. Shaw argued that at the time the Eleanor Moore Revocable Trust was executed, my great-grandmother was 89 years old and suffering from advanced cognitive decline and undue influence. He claimed she lacked testamentary capacity, meaning she did not understand what she was signing. Therefore, the trust was invalid. The house should revert to the next of kin, my mother, and I was currently illegally occupying their property. I looked up at Naomi. She was not worried. She was smiling. It was the smile of a grandmaster who watches an opponent move their queen into a trap. "They are bluffing," Naomi said, sliding a folder across the polished mahogany table. "And they are bluffing badly. They are banking on the fact that you do not have the medical records from 10 years ago. They assume those records are lost to time or buried in a hospital archive we cannot access without a court order." "Do we have them?" I asked. "Eva," Naomi said, tapping the folder. "Eleanor Moore was the most thorough woman I have ever studied. She did not just write a trust. She prepared a defense for it." I opened the folder. Inside were certified copies of medical records from Dr. Arthur Evans, a geriatric neurologist. They were dated the same week the trust was signed. There was a cognitive assessment, a mini-mental state examination score of 29 out of 30. Notes from the doctor describing Eleanor as alert, oriented, and possessing sharp recall of financial assets and familial relationships. But the real weapon was underneath the medical charts. It was a handwritten letter from Eleanor to her own attorney at the time, witnessed and notarized. I read the familiar, spidery handwriting, and I could almost smell the peppermint and old paper of her study. "I am directing that the Maple Grove property be placed in trust for my great-granddaughter, Eva Marie Moore, bypassing my granddaughter Margot entirely. This is not an act of malice, but of protection. Margot has a hole in her hand where money is concerned. If she holds the deed, the house will be leveraged, mortgaged, and lost within a decade. Eva is the only one with the discipline to keep the roof over their heads. I am doing this while of sound mind and heavy heart." "She knew," I whispered. "She predicted the future." She did not predict it, Naomi corrected. She observed the data and projected the trend, just like you do. Naomi drafted a response to Gregory Shaw that afternoon. It was not a long letter. It was a simple cover sheet attached to the medical records and Eleanor's handwritten note. The message was clear. We are not just ready for court. We are praying you take us there. 2 days later, Shaw called. His tone had shifted from aggressive litigator to weary mediator. He suggested a roundtable discussion to resolve this misunderstanding without the cost of litigation. He knew he had lost the capacity argument, but the chess match was far from over. While Shaw was trying to pivot, Naomi and I were digging deeper into the financials. We needed to know exactly how much damage had been done. We knew about the $45,000 HELOC, but Naomi, being Naomi, ran a comprehensive asset search on my parents, using the Maple Grove address as a keyword. That was when the second twist hit. Look at this, Naomi said, pointing to a line item on her laptop screen. It was a small loan, just $5,000, taken out 14 months ago from a predatory online lender, the kind with sky-high interest rates that advertises on daytime television. The borrower is listed as Margot Moore, Naomi said, but look at the collateral address. It was Maple Grove. She used the house again? I asked, feeling a fresh wave of nausea. She did not just use the house, Naomi said, her eyes narrowing. For a loan this small, they do not usually do a title search. They just verify residency. But look at the application status. It says, homeowner. She checked the box. Again, after the title had transferred to you, after she had already forged the HELOC documents. Why does $5,000 matter when they owe $45,000? I asked. Because it proves pattern and intent, Naomi said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. They can try to argue the HELOC was a one-time misunderstanding, a confusion about paperwork, but doing it twice, with 2 different lenders, that is systematic fraud. It destroys any defense of, oops, we did not know. She picked up her phone. I am calling the bank that holds the HELOC, the big one, and I'm going to tell them about the second loan, and the trust, and the fraud. Will they talk to you? Eva, Naomi said, looking at me with a shark-like grin. Banks hate losing money, but the only thing they hate more than losing money is the federal government investigating their underwriting practices. When I mention the words Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and failure of due diligence, they will not just talk, they will sing. She was right. The bank was terrified. It turned out that approving a home equity line of credit on a house the borrowers did not actually own was a massive compliance failure. If the regulators found out the bank had been asleep at the wheel, the fines would be astronomical. To save themselves, the bank threw my parents to the wolves. Within 48 hours, the bank's fraud department sent over a secure digital package. It contained everything: the original application, the credit check, and the audio recordings of the verification calls. We sat in Naomi's office and listened to the file labeled Verification Call 04 to MP3. My mother's voice filled the room. It was her charming voice, the one she used on neighbors and church deacons. Yes, that is right, the recording of Margot said. We have lived here for 20 years, owned it free and clear until now. And I see another adult listed at this address, the bank officer asked. Eva Moore, is she an owner? My stomach tightened. I held my breath. Eva? Margot laughed. It was a dismissive, light sound. Oh, no. Goodness, no. She is just our daughter. She stays in the back room sometimes. She is just a tenant. She pays us a little rent when she can. Poor thing. She is actually moving out soon. The recording ended. The room was silent. She is just a tenant, I repeated. Poor thing. I thought about the $120,000. I thought about the weekends I spent sanding the floors while she was at the spa. I thought about the nights I stayed up worrying about the property tax while she slept soundly. She erased you, Naomi said quietly, to get $45,000 for a car. She erased your entire existence as the provider of that household. I looked at the speaker. the last lingering shred of guilt, the tiny voice that whispered, "But she is your mother," finally died. It did not whimper, it just vanished. "What do we do?" I asked. "We give them a choice," Naomi said. "I am going to draft a settlement agreement, but it is going to be brutal. We offer them two paths. Path A. We hand all of this, the recordings, the forged applications, the second loan, to the district attorney and the federal authorities. Your parents will likely face felony charges for bank fraud and wire fraud. They will go to prison, and they will be bankrupt." "And Path B?" "Path B. They sign a civil admission of guilt. They agree to pay back every cent of the HELOC immediately. I do not care if they have to sell their jewelry or liquidate their retirement. They sign a permanent restraining order barring them from the property, and they agree to a gag order. If they ever speak your name in public again, if they ever post a vague status about you, if they ever lie to a relative about this, we release the evidence. They will never have $45,000 to pay back the loan," I said. "Then the bank will foreclose on them personally," Naomi said. "But since the house is yours and not theirs, the bank cannot take the house. The bank will have to sue your parents for the unsecured debt. That is their problem. The important part is that you are indemnified." "Do it," I said. That evening, I was back in my apartment, staring at the city lights, when my phone rang. It was Tessa. I hesitated. I had blocked her, but she was calling from a different number, a Los Angeles area code. I picked up. "Hello? Eva?" Her voice was small, broken. It did not sound like the bubbly influencer wannabe. It sounded like a child who had dropped her ice cream in the dirt. "It is me," she said. "Tessa." "I know who it is," I said. "Philip left me," she blurted out, a sob caught in her throat. I didn't say anything. "His parents. They heard about what happened, about the police, and the fraud. Philip's dad is a judge. Eva, he said they cannot be connected to a family like ours. He said it is a scandal. Philip called off the engagement this morning." She was crying openly now. "He was the love of my life, Eva, and now he is gone. Because of you. Because you had to make such a big scene. Why couldn't you just wait? Why did you have to call the cops?" I listened to her blame me. Even now, in the ruins of her life, she could not see the root cause. She could only see the person who turned on the lights, not the mess the lights revealed. "I have nowhere to go," she wept. "I gave up my apartment in LA. I sold my furniture. Mom and Dad are at a Motel 6. They have no money. You have the house. You have everything. Can't I just come stay in the guest room? Just until I get back on my feet? Please, Eva, I am your sister." I thought about the text she sent me when I was paying for the roof. I need to go to Bali to find myself. I thought about the recording of my mother calling me a tenant. "No," I said. "What? Eva, please, I have nothing." "You do not have nothing because of me, Tessa," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of anger. "You lost Philip because his family saw that our parents are criminals, and you are in this position because you spent your entire adult life letting Mom and Dad shield you from reality." "I didn't know," she wailed. "I didn't know about the trust." "You didn't ask," I said. "You never asked where the money came from. You never asked who paid for the roof. You just took the car. You just took the trips. You accepted the lie because it was comfortable." "Eva." "You are suffering now, Tessa," I said, gripping the phone. "But you are not a victim of me. You are paying the price for believing the convenient story instead of the true one." I hung up. I blocked the number. I sat there in the silence, feeling the weight of the severance. It was done. The immediate family was gone. Then my email chimed. I opened my laptop. It was a message from an address I didn't recognize at first. Beeman76, gmail.com. The subject line was, "Regarding Eleanor." I opened it. It was from my great-aunt Beatrice, my grandmother's younger sister. A woman who had lived in Arizona for 30 years and rarely came to family gatherings because Margot always said she was difficult. "Dear Eva, my daughter in Portland told me what happened this week.
About the house. About the police.
I have attached something I have kept in my Bible for 12 years. I promised your great-grandmother Eleanor I would only show it if it was absolutely necessary. It seems the time has come.
Attached was a scanned image of a notepad. The paper was yellowed. It was Eleanor's handwriting, but it was less formal than the letter to the lawyer. It was a personal note.
Beatrice, I have signed the papers today. The house goes to Eva. I know Margot will scream. I know Daniel will pout. But I look at that girl Eva, only 20 years old, and I see the only spine in this family. Margot is a hurricane. She will destroy everything she touches if she is not contained. This house is not a gift for Eva. It is a shield. I am giving her the only high ground she will ever have against her mother's recklessness. Pray she never has to use it, but I fear she will. Love, L. I stared at the screen. Tears, hot and fast, finally spilled over. For 6 years, no, for my whole life, I had thought I was the black sheep. I thought I was the cold one, the unlovable one, the one who didn't fit in with the warm, loving chaos of my family. But I wasn't the black sheep. I was the designated survivor. Eleanor had seen it. Beatrice had seen it. I hadn't been fighting the world alone. I had been the unknowing champion of a silent lineage of women who knew exactly what Margot was. I printed the email. I added it to the file labeled evidence. I wiped my face. I was not alone. And tomorrow, I would walk into that settlement meeting not just with a lawyer, but with the blessing of the woman who started it all. The chess game was over. It was time to clear the board. The conference room at Everline Legal Group was designed to intimidate. It was all glass, chrome, and polished mahogany, suspended 20 stories above the street. The air conditioning was set to a temperature that discouraged casual conversation. I sat on one side of the long table, with Naomi to my right. On the other side sat my parents, Margot and Daniel, flanking their attorney, Gregory Shaw. They looked terrible. My mother, usually perfectly put together, wore a blouse that needed ironing. Her roots were showing. She had missed that standing Thursday appointment because she had been too busy being evicted. My father looked 10 years older than he had last week. His shoulders slumped, his eyes fixed on the grain of the wood table. They looked small. That was the first thing I noticed. Without the backdrop of the house I had paid for, without the authority of parenthood they had wielded like a cudgel, they were just two tired people who had been caught in a lie. Naomi did not waste time with pleasantries. She slid a thick document across the table. It made a heavy sound as it hit the wood. "This is the settlement agreement," Naomi said. Her voice was pleasant, conversational, and completely terrifying. "It outlines the terms under which my client, Ms. Moore, agrees to forego filing formal criminal charges with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau regarding the fraudulent home equity line of credit and the secondary loan obtained under false pretenses." Gregory Shaw picked up the document. He put on his reading glasses. He was a professional. He knew a losing hand when he saw one, but he had to play the game. "These terms are aggressive," Shaw said, flipping a page. "The terms are non-negotiable," Naomi replied. She began to list them, ticking them off on her fingers. 191 Margot and Daniel Moore admit that they have no legal claim, title, or interest in the property at Maple Grove. They acknowledge that the deed belongs solely to Eva Moore and has for the past 2 years. My father flinched. 2. They agree to assume full personal liability for the $45,000 HELOC and the $5,000 personal loan. They will make arrangements with the lenders to remove the property as collateral, or they will pay the loans in full within 30 days. If they cannot, they will face the bank's legal department on their own merits, without dragging the property into it. 3, Naomi continued, her eyes locking on Margot. They agree to a permanent non-disparagement clause. They will not speak ill of Eva Moore. They will not post about her on social media. They will not discuss this matter with extended family, neighbors, or the press. And finally, Naomi said, leaning back, once the house is vacated and the loans are settled, Eva Moore reserves the right to sell the property, lease it, or burn it to the ground if she sees fit. Margot and Daniel Moore are entitled to 0% of the proceeds, not 1 cent. Shaw took off his glasses. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Naomi, come on. My clients have lived in that house for 20 years. They raised their children there. They maintained the property. Surely, if the house is sold, they are entitled to an equitable share for their contribution. They put sweat equity into that home. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat. It was a dark, sharp thing. Naomi did not laugh. She reached under the table and pulled out a binder. It was 4 inches thick. She opened it. Sweat equity, Naomi mused. Let us examine that. She pulled out a spreadsheet. Here is a breakdown of the maintenance costs for the last 6 years. New roof, $32,000. Paid by Eva Moore. Electrical rewiring, $22,000. Paid by Eva Moore. Plumbing overhaul, $18,000. Paid by Eva Moore. She flipped the page. And here we have the contributions of your clients. I have cross-referenced Eva's bank statements with their requests. Here is a text from Margot, asking for $500 for groceries. On the same day, a charge appears on her credit card for a luxury spa package. Here is a withdrawal for house repairs that matches the exact price of a set of golf clubs found in Daniel's trunk. Naomi looked at Shaw. They did not contribute equity. Gregory, they extracted it. They lived rent-free for 6 years while my client paid their taxes, their insurance, and their utilities. If we go to court for an equitable distribution based on contribution, your clients will end up owing her back rent totaling roughly $70,000. Shaw looked at the spreadsheet. He looked at his clients. He saw the truth in their averted eyes. Margot, Shaw said quietly, is this accurate? My mother did not look at him. She looked at me. Her eyes filled with tears. It was a sudden, practiced onset of emotion. Eva, she said, her voice trembling, how can you sit there and listen to this? We are your parents. We love you. Everything we did it for the family. We wanted to keep the house nice for you. We wanted to protect you. She reached a hand across the table, palm up. I only ever wanted what was good for you. Eva, I am your mother. The old Eva would have taken that hand. The old Eva would have felt the familiar crushing weight of guilt, the panic that I was being mean, that I was hurting the woman who gave me life. But the old Eva was gone. She had been evicted 3 days ago. I looked at her hand. It was shaking slightly. You did not want what was good for me, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the acoustic perfection of the room, it sounded like a gavel strike. You wanted what was good for your wallet, and you wanted what was convenient for your ego. Margot froze. Stop using the phrase, good for you, I continued. Buying Tessa a car with a loan taken out against my house was not good for me. Lying to the bank and calling me a tenant was not good for me. Hiding my inheritance for 2 years was not good for me. I leaned forward. You did not want to protect me. Mom, you wanted to use me. And you are crying now not because you are sad you hurt me, but because you lost your line of credit. Margot pulled her hand back as if she had been burned. She looked at my father, waiting for him to defend her. Daniel just stared at the table. Gregory Shaw sighed. It was the sigh of a man who had calculated the odds and found them terminal. He turned to his clients and lowered his voice, but in the silence, we could hear every word. Margot, Daniel, Shaw said, you have 2 options. If we leave this room without a signature, Naomi will file the complaint with the federal authorities by 5 o'clock. Based on the evidence of the forged HELOC application and the secondary loan, you are looking at potential charges for bank fraud and wire fraud. These are felonies. You will go to trial, you will lose, and you will likely go to federal prison for a minimum of 2 to 5 years. My mother gasped, a short, sharp sound. Or, Shaw said, sliding a pen across the table, you sign this, you lose the house, you lose the claim, you accept the debt, but you stay out of jail, and you keep your freedom. He looked at them. I cannot win this for you in court. The paper trail is absolute. Sign the agreement. My father moved first.
His hands were shaking so badly, he could barely hold the pen. He did not look at me. He did not look at Margot. He just pulled the document toward him, found the line marked Daniel Moore, and scribbled his name. It was a messy, jagged signature, the signature of a beaten man. He pushed the paper toward my mother. Margot stared at it. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She looked at the paper, then she looked up at me one last time. There was a desperate, bargaining look in her eyes. She was searching for the crack in my armor. She was looking for the daughter who had spent 10 years trying to buy her approval. "Eva," she whispered, "please, if you sell the house, we have nothing. We are old. Where will we go?" I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the fear. Yes, but I also saw the calculation. Even now, at the edge of the cliff, she was trying to see if she could push me off instead. "I have a question," I said. Margot blinked, hope flaring in her eyes. "Yes? Anything?" "If I had listened to you last Tuesday," I said slowly, "if I had packed my boxes like a good girl, if I had moved out by the weekend and let Tessa move in, would you have ever told me about the trust?" The room went dead silent. Naomi watched her. Shaw watched her. My father watched her. I waited. I wanted her to lie. I wanted her to say yes. Of course. We were just waiting for the right time. I wanted her to try to spin it. But she didn't. She couldn't. The weight of the question was too heavy for even her to lift. She looked at me, and for a split second, the mask dropped completely. I saw the truth. I saw the reality where I lived in a rental for the rest of my life, while Tessa lived in my house, and my parents took the secret to their graves. She looked down. She picked up the pen, and she signed. The scratching of the pen on the paper was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Naomi reached out and took the document. She checked the signatures. She checked the date. She closed the folder. "There is one final addendum," Naomi said, her voice crisp. "Clause 14b. We call it the scorched earth provision." She looked at Margot. "We are aware of your recent phone calls to extended family and your posts on social media. We have documented the slander." Naomi tapped the folder. "This settlement buys your silence. If you violate the non-disparagement clause, if you tell one aunt, one cousin, or one neighbor that Eva stole the house, we will not sue you. We will simply release the full evidentiary file to your entire contact list." Margot went pale. "We will email the video of the confrontation, the copy of the trust, the forged loan documents, and the recording of you calling Eva a tenant to everyone you know, the church group, the bridge club, your sisters, everyone. We will let the truth ruin your reputation so thoroughly that you will never be able to show your face in this town again." Naomi smiled, a razor-thin expression. "Do we understand each other?" Margot nodded. She could not speak. She looked like she had physically shrunk 3 sizes in the last hour. "Then we are done," Naomi said. "You have 30 days to settle the loans. The keys are already in our possession. Do not return to the property." Shaw stood up. He began packing his briefcase. He looked relieved. He had managed to keep his clients out of prison, which, given the evidence, was a miracle. "Come on," Shaw said to them. My father stood up. He looked frail. He walked toward the door, his gait shuffling. My mother followed him, clutching her purse like a shield, her eyes fixed on the floor. As they passed the side of the table where I sat, my father paused. He did not look up. He just stood there for a second, close enough that I could smell the stale motel soap on his clothes. "I am sorry, Eva," he whispered. It was barely audible, just a breath of air. Then he kept walking, following Shaw out the glass door. I sat there. I heard the heavy door click shut. I replayed the words in my head. "I am sorry." 10 years ago, that sentence would have been water in the desert. I would have drunk it up. I would have let it wash away everything. But today, it just felt like a stone. It was heavy, and it was cold, and it was too late. "He is sorry he got caught," Naomi said, echoing my thoughts as she organized the papers.
And he is sorry he is weak, but he is not sorry enough to have stopped it.
I know, I said. I looked at the settlement agreement. It was done. I had the house. I had the justice. I had the victory. I looked at the empty chairs where my parents had sat. I had won the war. But looking at the empty space they left behind, I realized the price of the victory was exactly what Eleanor had predicted. I had to become the person who could survive the burning of her own bridges.
"Are you okay?" Naomi asked, putting a hand on my arm. I took a deep breath. The air in the room was scrubbed clean, sterile and cool.
I asked her the question, I said. I asked her if she would have told me.
And she didn't answer, Naomi said.
That was the answer, I said.
That was the closure. I stood up. Let's go. Naomi, I have a house to sell. I stood in the center of the living room at Maple Grove. It was empty. We had hired movers to clear out my parents' furniture 2 days after the settlement was signed. My father's recliner, the one he sat in while I painted the baseboards around his feet, was gone. The curio cabinet where my mother displayed her collection of porcelain figurines, bought with money we didn't have, was gone. The house echoed, but for the first time in 6 years, the echo didn't sound like a demand. It sounded like potential. I had made the decision the night after the settlement meeting. I could have moved in. I could have lived here. It was a beautiful house. I had made sure of that. But every time I looked at the fireplace, I remembered begging my father to fix the flue. Every time I looked at the patio, I remembered being called selfish for asking for help. This house was a crime scene. I had cleaned up the blood, but I didn't want to sleep in it. Great-Grandma Eleanor had told me to choose my own roof. This roof, as sturdy as I had made it, was still chosen by them. I hired Jordan Wells, a real estate agent Naomi recommended. He was a sharp, energetic man who wore tailored suits and walked fast. He met me at the property on a Tuesday morning to discuss the listing. He walked through the house in silence for the first 10 minutes. He ran his hand over the quartz countertops in the kitchen. He inspected the crown molding. He checked the brand of the new furnace in the basement. When he came back to the living room, he looked at me with genuine surprise. "Eva," he said, "I have to tell you, when Naomi told me this was a lived-in family home with some DIY updates, I was expecting a disaster. I was expecting Pinterest fails and uneven tile." He gestured around the room. "This is professional grade. The finish work is impeccable. The flow of the kitchen renovation is perfect. Who was your general contractor?"
I was, I said.
He raised an eyebrow. "You hired the subs?"
"I hired them. I scheduled them. I managed the budget. And I did the finish work myself. I laid that backsplash. I sanded these floors."
Jordan looked at the floors again, with new respect. "Well, you have added significant value here. This isn't a fixer-upper. This is a turnkey luxury property in a rising school district. We are going to list this at the top of the market." He named a number. It was high. It was breathtakingly high. "Do you think we can get that?" I asked. "In this market? With this level of inventory? Absolutely." Later that week, a professional photographer came to take the listing photos. I watched him set up his lights in the kitchen. He adjusted the blinds to let the afternoon sun hit the backsplash I had installed 3 years ago. I remembered that weekend. It was 4th of July. My friends were at a barbecue. Tessa was in Cabo San Lucas. I was on my knees on the kitchen floor, covered in grout, crying because I had cut my finger and there was no one to help me bandage it. I had felt so pathetic then. I had felt like a servant. But looking at the photo on the photographer's monitor, I didn't see a servant's work. I saw a masterpiece. The lines were straight. The color choice was timeless. The execution was flawless. A realization hit me, sudden and warm. I hadn't just thrown my life away for 6 years. I hadn't just wasted my time. I had built skills. I had learned discipline. I had learned how to manage a massive project with 0 resources and hostile stakeholders. I had learned how to negotiate. I had learned how to endure. They had used me, yes, but they hadn't drained me dry. I was walking away with something they could never take, the absolute certainty of my own competence. While Jordan prepped the listing, I started building the rest of my life. I accepted a contract for a massive UX project with a biotech firm based in San Diego. It was remote for now, but they wanted me to relocate in 6 months to lead the team. San Diego. The dream I had put on a shelf 6 years ago was suddenly right there, dusting itself off. I also enrolled in an advanced personal finance and wealth management course. I knew how to save, and I knew how to budget, but I wanted to know how to grow. I wanted to understand trusts, investments, and asset protection on a forensic level. I never wanted to be in a room again where I didn't understand the paper being slid across the table. Naomi, watching my transformation, made one more introduction. "There is a group," she said over dinner one night. "It is not therapy, exactly. It is more like a strategy circle. It is for people who have been through what you have been through. Financial abuse by family members." I went to the first meeting in a community center basement. I expected it to be depressing. I expected a circle of people crying. It wasn't. It was a room full of survivors. There were men whose fathers had stolen their identities to open credit cards. There were women whose mothers had guilt-tripped them into paying off gambling debts. When I told my story, the trust, the HELOC, the tenant comment, the room went silent. But it wasn't a silence of pity. It was a silence of recognition. After the meeting, a young woman named Sarah came up to me. She looked tired. She looked like I did 2 months ago. "My parents want me to sign a loan for them," she whispered. "They say they will lose the house if I don't. They say I am the only one who can save the family." I looked at her. I saw the guilt eating her alive. "You are not a bank, Sarah," I told her, channeling Eleanor. "And you are not a firefighter. If their house is burning because they played with matches, you don't have to throw your body on the flames." She started to cry, but she nodded. I realized then that my receipts were not just for court. They were a map for other people to find their way out of the fog. Of course, the fog tried to roll back in. Tessa emailed me on a Thursday night. It was a long, rambling message sent from her phone at 2 a.m. "Eva, I hope you are happy. I am writing this from a room I am renting in a basement in Van Nuys. I share a bathroom with 3 strangers. I lost my marketing job because the company saw the video of Mom screaming on the Facebook group. Someone tagged me. My boss said I was a brand risk. I am working the night shift at a bar now. My feet hurt constantly. I just don't understand why you had to push it this far. Why did you have to let that neighbor film it? Why did you let it go online? You could have stopped it. You could have just let us in and we could have figured it out as a family. You destroyed my life because you wanted to win." I read it twice. The old Eva would have felt a stab of responsibility. The old Eva would have offered to send money. The new Eva saw the logic flaws. She saw the deflection. Tessa was still refusing to look at the architects of her misery, the parents who raised her to be helpless. I typed a reply. It took me 30 seconds. "Tessa, I did not film the video. I did not post the video. I did not tag you. Those were the consequences of Mom's public behavior. I stopped covering for people's mistakes, and that includes yours. I did not destroy your life. I just stopped propping it up. You are an adult. You have a job. You have a roof. That is a start. You can choose to build from there, or you can choose to blame me. Only one of those paths leads out of the basement." I hit send. I didn't feel guilty. I felt light. 2 days later, a letter arrived from my mother. It was handwritten on floral stationery, the kind she used to write thank you notes to the pastor. It wasn't an apology. It was a status report of her suffering. "The church committee asked us to step down. The bridge club has stopped inviting me. People cross the street when they see us. Your father is depressed. We are living in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It is noisy. The neighbors are rude. I pray every night that God softens your heart and you realize what you have done to your reputation. A daughter who sues her parents. It is unnatural. Ava." I didn't finish reading it. I didn't crumple it up, either. I drove to Naomi's office and handed it to the paralegal. "File this under violation of non-disparagement monitoring," I said. "I don't want to reply. I just want it documented." Smart, the paralegal said. I continued my sessions with Dr. Solani. We stopped talking about the past and started mapping the future. She taught me to label the feelings that used to control me. When I felt a twinge of sadness about my parents, I named it grief for the parents I wanted, not the ones I had. When I felt a flash of worry about what people thought, I named it conditioned compliance. You are retraining your brain, Dr. Milani said. You spent 30 years in survival mode. You were the designated shock absorber. Now you have to learn how to drive the car. I don't just want to drive, I told her. I want to build the road. The house went on the market on a Friday. By Sunday, we had multiple offers. Jordan called me on Monday morning. Eva, this is insane. We have a bidding war. People love the craftsmanship. They love the story of the renovation. Well, the version I told them. About the owner who poured her heart into every detail. Every offer that came in was a validation. $500,000 over what my parents paid for it. $600,000. My parents had told me I was bad with money because I wouldn't give it to them. They had told me I was selfish because I invested in the asset instead of their whims. The market disagreed. The market said I was brilliant. The numbers on the offer sheets were not just money. They were grades on a final exam I didn't know I was taking. On Wednesday afternoon, I was sitting in a coffee shop, working on the wireframes for the San Diego project. My phone rang. It was Jordan. Eva, he said. His voice was buzzing with excitement. We have it. An all-cash offer. $50,000 over asking price. No contingencies. They want to close in 14 days. I stopped typing. I looked out the window at the rain falling on the Portland streets. Who are they? I asked. A young couple, engineers. They are moving here from Seattle. They wrote a letter. They said they walked into the kitchen and felt like someone had built it with love. They said it felt solid. They said it felt like a fortress. A fortress. That was what Eleanor had wanted. That was what I had built. I had built a fortress to protect myself, and now it was going to protect someone else. Take it, I said. Are you sure? Jordan asked. This is the final step. Once we sign, it is gone. The house, the memories, all of it. I thought about the ghostly echo of my mother's voice in the hallway. I thought about my father's shadow in the recliner. I thought about the girl who used to cry on the kitchen floor. It is not gone, Jordan, I said. I am liquidating it. I am turning the bricks into freedom. Okay, he said. I will send the paperwork. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, watching the rain. I calculated the net proceeds in my head. After paying off the fraudulent HELOC, because I had agreed to cover it initially to clear the title, before deducting it from the settlement judgment against my parents, and after the agent fees and taxes, I would be walking away with nearly $700,000. It was enough to buy a house in San Diego outright. It was enough to start my own design firm if I wanted. It was enough to never, ever have to answer a phone call I didn't want to answer again. I opened my banking app. I looked at the balance. It was just a number, but it was the most beautiful number I had ever seen. It was the price of my life, bought back one receipt at a time. I closed my laptop. I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot, strong, and bitter. It tasted like victory. The conference room at the title company was quiet, save for the rhythmic sound of a pen scratching against paper. It was a heavy, expensive pen, the kind that made you feel like you were signing a peace treaty rather than a property sale. I sat across from the buyers, the young couple from Seattle. They were holding hands under the table. They looked at the stack of documents with a mixture of terror and excitement that I remembered well. But when I had looked at my closing papers 6 years ago, I had been terrified of failing my parents. These two were just terrified of the mortgage rate. It was a healthy fear. It was their fear, not someone else's imposed upon them. The notary, a woman with efficient glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor, slid the final document toward me. This is the grant deed, she said, the final transfer of title. I looked at the paper. I looked at the line that said, Grantor, Eva Moore. I looked at the property address, Maple Grove. For 6 years, that address had been my prison.
It had been the place where I worked weekends while my friends went to brunch. It had been the place where I was told I was selfish for buying paint. It had been the place where I was called a tenant in the home I was paying for. I picked up the pen. I did not hesitate. I wrote my name in cursive, the ink flowing smooth and black. With that signature, the house was gone. The roof I paid for, the floors I sanded, the patio where I had cried, it all belonged to the couple across the table now. "Congratulations," the notary said. "We are closed." The wire transfer hit my account 45 minutes later. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, staring at my banking app. The number was staggering. After paying off the fraudulent home equity line of credit, which I had to do to clear the title, and paying the agent commissions and the closing costs, the balance in my account was $712,000. I read it out loud. $712,000. It was not just money, it was time. It was the 10 years of my 20s that I had spent stressed and scraping by. It was the vacations I did not take. It was the therapy I would need. It was all there, returned to me with interest. I immediately moved the money. I was a UX designer. I liked clean systems. I transferred $50,000 to a high-yield savings account. That was my never again fund. If I ever lost my job, if I ever got sick, I would never have to ask anyone for a dime. I transferred $400,000 to a diversified index fund portfolio. That was my future. That was the retirement my parents had tried to steal from me. And the rest, over $260,000. I moved to a checking account labeled San Diego. That was for the movers. That was for the rent on a glass-walled apartment by the ocean. That was for the new furniture I would pick out myself, without anyone telling me it was too modern or too expensive. There was one final piece of financial business to attend to. Naomi had prepared a document for my parents. It was not a check. It was a copy of the final closing disclosure. It listed the sale price. It listed the net proceeds. And at the bottom, where the distribution to Margot and Daniel Moore would have been if they had actually owned the house, there was a single, bold number, 0. Naomi had insisted on sending it via certified mail. They need to see the math. She had told me. They need to see exactly how much their greed cost them. If they had just been honest, if they had just treated you like a daughter instead of a resource, you probably would have shared this with them eventually. They need to see the price tag of their betrayal. I imagined them opening that envelope in their cramped apartment. I imagined my mother looking at the number, $712,000, and realizing that was the inheritance she had thrown away because she wanted a $45,000 car for her favorite child. I felt a flash of pity, but it was distant, like watching a storm on the news happening in another country. It did not touch me. I opened my email on my phone. I had one last message to send. To Margot Moore, Daniel Moore. Subject, moving forward. I typed the words I had prepared. I have sold the house. The proceeds are in my account, as per the settlement agreement. The debt you incurred is your own, but the lien on the property is satisfied. You are free of the bank's immediate legal action regarding the house, though you still owe the personal debt. This is the last email I will send you. From this moment on, all communication must go through Naomi Price at Everline Legal Group. I am moving to a new city. Do not look for me. Do not call me. I spent 10 years trying to save you. I tried to be your retirement plan, your handyman, and your emotional crutch. I am retiring from those roles. I am no longer your bank. I am no longer your rescue worker. And I am no longer the person you can use to make yourselves feel better. I hope you find peace, but you will have to find it without me. I hit send. Then I blocked the email address. I drove to Mrs. Klein's house for dinner. She had insisted. You cannot leave town without a proper meal, she had said. Mrs. Klein lived in the house directly across the street from Maple Grove. Her living room window looked right at the front door where the confrontation had happened. She served pot roast and red wine. She was a widow, a retired librarian with sharp eyes and a warm laugh. After dinner, she brought out her iPad. I wanted to show you something, she said.
I know you worry about what people think. I know your mother tried to paint you as the villain." She opened the neighborhood Facebook group. She scrolled past the posts about lost cats and trash pickup schedules until she found a thread from 2 weeks ago. It was the one about the video. But she didn't show me the video. She showed me the comments. "Good for her," one neighbor wrote. "My parents did the exact same thing to me. I wish I had been brave enough to change the locks." "That is Eva Moore," another wrote. "She is the one who planted all those hydrangeas. She was always working on that house. I'm glad she stood up for herself." "We need to stop normalizing parents using their kids as retirement funds," wrote a third. "This is a lesson for everyone." There were hundreds of comments. Not one of them blamed me. Not one of them called me ungrateful. "You became a bit of a folk hero around here, dear," Mrs. Klein said, patting my hand. "You showed people that family is not a magic word that excuses abuse. You set a boundary, and people respect that." I looked at the screen for so long. I had been terrified of the neighbors' gaze. I thought they were judging me for kicking my parents out. But they weren't judging me. They were cheering for me. I drove to my new temporary apartment in the Pearl District. It was late. The city was quiet. I sat on the floor of the living room. I had not unpacked much. Knowing I was leaving for San Diego in 3 days, the room was bare, white, and clean. I spread my papers out on the floor. I had the closing statement from the house sale. I had the copy of Great-Grandma Eleanor's trust. I had the old, crumpled receipts from Home Depot. I had the printout of the emails from Tessa. I arranged them in a timeline. 10 years of my life. I looked at the receipts. I used to think they were just proof of money spent. But looking at them now, under the stark light of the apartment, I realized they were more than that. The receipt for the roof was proof of my resilience. The receipt for the electrical wiring was proof of my competence. The email from Tessa was proof of my patience. The trust document was proof that someone had loved me enough to protect me. These were not just financial records. They were emotional receipts. I had kept them all. I had cataloged every slight, every dollar, every tear. And because I had kept them, I had been able to prove my reality when they tried to gaslight me into insanity. I pulled my laptop onto my lap. I opened a forum I had been lurking on for months. It was a community for people recovering from financial trauma. I started a new thread. Title: I sold the house today, and I kept the money. I wrote for an hour. I changed the names, but I kept the details. I wrote about the tenant comment. I wrote about the car. I wrote about the moment I changed the locks. I hit post. Within minutes, the responses started coming in. "Thank you for writing this. I'm currently paying my dad's mortgage and he treats me like dirt. I needed to hear this. This gave me permission to say no to my sister. You are a legend. Enjoy San Diego." I closed the laptop. I had taken my pain, metabolized it, and turned it into a ladder for someone else. That was better than revenge. That was purpose. I couldn't sleep. I put on my coat and walked down to the waterfront. I stood on the Hawthorne Bridge, looking down at the Willamette River. The water was black and glossy, reflecting the city lights. I thought about Eleanor. I thought about her sitting in that dark study, writing the trust that would save my life 10 years later. She had known. She had seen the weakness in her own daughter, and she had seen the strength in me. "Thank you," I whispered to the river. "I used it, Grandma. I used the shield." I imagined her nodding. I imagined her telling me to stand up straight. "I did not let them take it," I said. "I did not let them use me as an asset. I am a person." The wind blew off the water, cold and fresh. I took a deep breath. It felt like the first full breath I had taken since I was 22. I walked back to the apartment. I sat at the small desk by the window. I opened a new design file on my computer. I was a UX designer. My job was to solve problems. My job was to make systems intuitive and safe for the user. I started sketching a wireframe. It was an app idea I had been toying with for weeks, a secure, encrypted vault for documenting financial abuse, a place where users could upload receipts, log gaslighting text messages, and track shared assets. an app that would help people build their own evidence file before they even knew they needed one. I named the project file The Ledger. I worked until the sun came up over the mountains. I designed the interface. I mapped the user journey. I built the features I wished I had possessed 6 years ago. When the sun hit my face, I stopped. I looked at the screen. It was good work. It was meaningful work. I stood up and stretched. My back cracked. I felt strong. I walked to the window and looked south, toward California, toward the ocean, toward the future. My parents had told me to move out. They had told me to make room for the golden child. They had told me I was nothing but a placeholder in their story. But they were wrong. My parents said, "Move out. It's your sister's house now." But in the end, I was the one who moved them out of my life. The house was mine. The receipts were mine. And for the first time in history, the future was entirely mine. Thank you so much for listening to this story of justice and reclaiming one's life. If you are listening to this, please leave a comment down below, letting me know where you are tuning in from. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on Eva's journey. Please do not forget to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself.